Hello vinyl community. It's been a while since I've done a video. My only excuse is I've been listening to music rather than talking about it, as it should be, That's what we all want to do, isn't it? But I've bought a bunch of interesting stuff recently and I thought I need to share these with you. So I've got a handful of stuff here to show. Let's get on with it. First off, this one was a bit of a blind buy. I was on Discogs buying something else and I thought I'd check out what else the vendor had for sale so I could take advantage of combined postage. And he had this for £5. And I had no idea what it was, but I thought it was worth a go. And it's turned out to be a really great buy. So the band is Field Division. They're pretty much a duo. I think they get a few other people helping them out. And the album's called Dark Matter Dreams. And it came out in 2018. It's on the Bella Union label, which tends to be a really good label for kind of cosmic Americana type music, which is kind of what this is. I mean, the biggest influence undoubtedly is Buckingham Nicks era Fleetwood Mac, that kind of Rumours sound. But there's a lot more to it than that, and it becomes, as it goes on, a much darker album. I mean, the album title suggests that. The artwork as well. I mean, that reminds me quite a lot of If I Could Only Remember My Name, the David Crosby album. And musically, it's got elements of that as well. There's definitely quite a few of those sort of spooky, ethereal vocals on here. They play it fairly straight for the first side, and much of the first side. There are hints that things are going to get a little bit weirder. Particularly on the final track on the first side, Siddhartha, which is named after a Hermann Hesse novel, which detailed someone's sort of spiritual journey. And appropriately, they have a kind of Indian sitar drone to that track. So it's getting a little bit trippy by this point. And the second side, it gets trippier and it gets darker. Get a fair few sort of wordless vocals. We get a lot of the cosmic country guitar. We get some sort of echo and phasing. And it just becomes a much darker beast. It really does. The track titles suggest that that's where it's going. You've got tracks called things like Lay Cursed, It's Not Going to Be All Right, which is as dark as the title would suggest. Dark Matter Dreams, the title track. And This Is How Your Love Destroys Me. So yeah, it's not all happy clappy 70s FM rock, that's for sure. It's a really, really great listen, this one. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. There are elements of the Cocteau Twins in some of the vocals as well. And you get hints of Jonathan Wilson, that Laurel Canyon kind of sound. Like I say, David Crosby. Over it all, Fleetwood Mac are there. And it's a great listen. So if you can get it cheap, or even if you have to pay full whack for it, this is a really good album. So you should check it out. And also, forgot to mention, it comes on this quite fetching sort of marbled silver vinyl as well. So for £5, I am cock a hoop. And next up is an album by a band called Montrose Avenue. This was fairly recently, 2022 in fact, reissued on vinyl with different sleeve art to the original. And this is one I've been after for a while. The drummer in this band was previously in Britpop also ran's Menswear. And he also happens to be the cousin of a guy I used to be good mates with back in the day. And I'm pretty sure that this guy's band supported a band I was in at one time. I do remember chatting to him. Thoroughly nice guy. And you might know him. His name's Matt Everett. And I hadn't put two and two together because I'm not someone who really listens to the radio. But he's now a Radio 6 DJ, BBC Radio 6. It's that Matt Everett. In fact, I only put two and two together when I went to see him in conversation with Robert Plant at Rough Trade East before the pandemic hit. And as the evening wore on, I thought, I know this guy. And I thought, oh yeah, that's who it is. But anyway, he drums on this album. He left Menswear to join this lot or to form this band. Good move on his part, I think. I mean, Menswear weren't bad, but this is a fantastic album. It's got that kind of Britpop sound to it in places. It reminds me of the band Dodgy a fair bit at times, but there are Kinks elements. Definitely hear the Beatles here. The Beach Boys harmonies are all over this. In fact, it sounds like every member of this band could be the lead singer. The vocals are so good. And in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they do switch it up a bit and share out the lead vocals. Superb album. Stylistically, it's got variety. I mean, it reminds me of Delamitri in places. It has that kind of commercial countryish twang to some of the tunes. Like I say, there's Britpop on here. The track, Yesterday's Return, almost sounds like an updated version of 60s Baroque pop. It has a harpsichord intro and a bit of a harpsichord solo. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. There's a track called Keep on the Road, which is one of those tracks that all bands write eventually about missing people back home and wondering when the tour's going to end. And it's kind of like a cousin of Beth by Kiss for that reason, I suppose. But only if Kiss was better written, performed by a better band, and had a decent singer on it. So nothing like Beth really, but that's kind of the ballpark it's in. It's orchestrated, ambitious, power pop really. Beautiful, beautiful song. Elsewhere, you've got more sort of countryish ballads. The track Closing Time definitely has that kind of vibe to it, even has stand-up bass and piano on that and brushed drums rather than full-on assault with the sticks. And the title track, 30 Days Out, is very Beatlesque. It almost sounds like a sped-up version of the Dear Prudence riff, that one. So this is thoroughly recommended, if only for the vocal harmonies. I mean, there's lots of other reasons to recommend it, but the vocal harmonies are amazing on this album. Love it, absolutely love it. So congratulations to Matt Everett. You've had a fantastic career. Even if you hadn't ended up as a Radio 6 DJ, this would be a fine legacy. Love it. Great album. Now, I love to read, and I tend to alternate reading a novel and then reading a music biography. And one of the best music biographies I've read recently is Wayne Kramer's The Hard Stuff. Fantastic read. This guy has lived a life and a half, and obviously he's lived to tell the tale. This is great. He's been in prison on drugs charges. He's been an addict. He's been a revolutionary. Really walking it like he talks it. And even though his life has gone completely pear-shaped at times, what makes this such a good read and makes him such an appealing storyteller is he doesn't blame anyone for anything that went wrong in his life apart from himself. And that's really refreshing. And reading this made me realise that there's a big gap in my MC5 collection. I didn't have their third album, High Time. But now I do. It's not an original Atlantic issue from 71. It's actually a 2016 Rhino Atlantic reissue. And I've got to say, this is my favourite MC5 album. Kick Out the Jams, fantastic sort of live document of the anarchy they produced on stage. Back in the USA, I love it, but there's a couple of clunkers on there for me. I don't like it when they do the full-on 50s rock and roll pastiche, like the Tutti Frutti cover that opens the album. But on this album, they get it all right, and the musicianship is spectacular as well. I mean, the guitar playing is savage. Absolutely love it. It's hard to pick highlights on this album because it is all so good. I mean, it starts off with Sister Anne, which is real sort of snotty, punky take on that kind of Chuck Berry sound. I mean, yeah, okay, 50s rock and roll, but I can deal with that. Chuck Berry is quality. And it just improves from that point on. Got to Keep Moving. The final track on the first side is real agitated R&B with harmonica and some real restless sort of sticking it to the man type lyrics. Lots of edgy guitar, almost a punky Motown rhythm to it. Spectacular. Starting side 2, Future Now, has a great lead vocal from Rob Tyner. And it's got a great insistent heavy guitar riff with a lot of shredding on it as well. And then it goes all sort of sensitive on us, and there's lots of reverbed plucked guitar and echoey vocals. So that's a really nice touch. Really ambitious album. Over and Over starts off with what sounds like a Keith Moon drum intro, and then launches into what sounds pretty much like a classic Who track. Absolutely superb. Loads of Who-like guitar and lots of fuzz guitar, revolutionary lyrics, anti-Vietnam War lyrics. That's a definite highlight. And then it finishes with a track called Skunk, Sonically Speaking, which kind of starts with a drum solo. Don't let that put you off. It's tasteful, and it's joined by a load of percussion played by a bunch of their musician friends, including Bob Seger. Don't know what he's playing, banging a cowbell or a paint can or a fire extinguisher or something. But that's a really good sound, and it's accompanied by a tasty circular riff. And then it kind of segues into this jazzy horn rock with saxophone, and don't let that put you off, because it's like a tougher sounding Blood, Sweat and Tears, and they do it so well. Absolutely love this album. So don't sleep on this one if you see it. MC5 High Time, great album. So I'd love a 1972 original of this on the Harvest label, but it's a tough one to track down. But I've got a reissue, which is a really quality reissue, and it's Spontaneous Combustion's Tryout album. Like I say, originally came out in 72. This is a 2015 reissue on the Timeless label, and they've done a great job of reproducing this packaging and the sound on this album. Sound is fantastic. You've got the original die-cut style sleeve, and you've even got the 3 inserts that came with the original. So you've got the band Gary Margetts, who plays guitar and sings, his brother Tris, who plays bass and synthesizers, and Tony Brock on drums. And those of you who watch my channel regularly will know that I was raving about Tony Brock not so long ago. He's playing on the Strider album. He seems to be just as capable of playing John Bonham-esque grooves as he does the kind of snap-in, precise drumming that Carl Palmer plays at Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And this is kind of where he's at on this album. It's a real progressive tour de force. But the interesting thing is, coming out in 1972 as it did, this stylistically has huge elements of 60s psychedelia and even psych pop on here. There's a lot of progressive rock, even being quite King Crimson-esque at times, and real hard rock, almost proto-metal at times. And the musicianship's amazing. Gary Margetts is a really good guitar player. I mean, they're all fantastic, their instruments. Highlights on here, probably on the first side, Brainstorm, which starts with some spacey noises, has throbbing bass and lots of slide guitar sounds. And then it launches into this kind of progadelic hard rock riff, which brings to mind bands like Lucifer's Friend, Led Zeppelin on The Immigrant Song, Atomic Rooster, that kind of thing. Utterly brilliant, love it. Then you get a track like Love and Laughter at the end of the side, which, if anything, is more of a 60s psych pop throwback. It's got more in common with bands like The End and The Move and Blossom Toes and the easy beats, I suppose. Closer to Powerpop than Prog, if anything. But it still seems to sound like spontaneous combustion. It's a clever trick. At no point do I feel like they've gone too far off piste, if you know what I mean. Side 2 continues to be fantastic. There's elements of Rush at the start of the track Pan. There's fuzz guitar freakouts. And on the final track, Monolith, parts 1, 2 and 3, I'm reminded a lot of bands like Armageddon, Captain Beyond, that kind of progressive proto-metal sort of sound. And they produce a glorious, hard prog racket, they really do. You even get a kind of a jazz section with a nice sort of mellow walking bass line before they revert to that kind of hard prog Captain Beyond sort of sound. So you've got to check this album out. I can't recommend it highly enough. Superb album, incredible musicianship throughout. And next up is an album that I would love an original of, but it's never going to happen. It came out in 1973 on the Merlin Records label, and only 99 copies were pressed. So the chances of getting one of those is pretty slim. I did see that the Discogs shows that the last copy that sold was in 2010, and somebody paid 30 quid for it. So they got an absolute bargain there. You'd be paying 4 figures now. And it's Ithaca's A Game for All Who Know, complete with artwork that references William Blake. And this is a really nice piece of spacey psychedelic folk, I suppose. Lots of sort of acoustic, classical type guitars on here. There's flute, male and female vocals, very dreamy and soporific. And if anything, this reminds me of Pink Floyd, kind of post the Syd Barrett era, but before they really found their sound with kind of Dark Side of the Moon and albums like that. So you're talking Obscured by Clouds, More, and Meddle perhaps. Really, really interesting album. Hard to pick favourite tracks on here because it's more of a mood piece than individual songs, I guess. But at a push, I'd say the third track, which I think is called Times, although all the tracks seem to be divided into subsections. And that is almost like a psych folk version of Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac's Albatross. It's all kind of female vocals, muted tom-tom mallet rolls. Yeah, definitely got that Albatross sort of vibe to it, until it gets all kind of perky and sunshiny towards the end, where it actually reminds me more of sort of 90s indie band called Joy Zipper, who are pretty obscure, but yeah, definitely got a feel of that to them. The B-side continues in the same sort of vein, lots of that spacey psychedelic folk, and you get a few kind of weird trippy sound effects as well, like the sort of cockpit chatter from astronauts out in space, and the album actually finishes with the sound of paper being torn. So yeah, it's a trippy album, it's a mellow album, and very much recommended. And if you can get an original for 30 quid, you lucky bastard, that's all I can say. And finally, an album by a band I'd never heard of until my good friend Rob bought me this for my birthday. He has a habit of introducing me to good bands. And ever since getting it, I've been reading about them and watching them on YouTube, and it seems like everybody's talking about them. And it's Crownlands and their Fearless album. And this is famous, infamous, notorious, if you like, for being very Rush influenced. And I'm talking the Rush that put out Hemispheres and Farewell to Kings. It's got that feel to it. It splits opinion because some people think it's too blatantly ripping off Rush. I would argue there's only one track on here which could reasonably be accused of that. Admittedly, it lasts for an entire side. And that's the track Starlifter Fearless Part 2, which takes up the whole of side 1. But the band makes no bones about the fact they are paying tribute to Rush on this album. And there are a lot of other influences at play here. The band is a duo. They're Canadian, so Rush is in their DNA, you could argue. The drummer sings, he provides the vocals, and the guitarist is also the bass player. He plays Taurus bass pedals. So they managed to pull it off live, I think, produce this sound. They are so good at what they do. Superb musicianship. And it's thoroughly entertaining. And if, like me, you think how sad it was that Rush never returned to the sound that they had in the 70s, you could well really get off on this. I mean, there's other influences here anyway. Like I say, I can hear Triumph on here. I can hear Star Castle. I can hear Styx, I suppose. And even though a lot of people say the singer's vocals are just like Geddy Lee's, they're not really. He sings in a sort of high register, but to me he sounds more like Ozzy Osbourne, but Ozzy Osbourne on helium, if you like. He's got that kind of mournful kind of sound to his vocals. Absolutely amazing stuff. Really enjoyed it. First time I listened to it, my jaw hit the floor. And yeah, if you can get over the fact that, yes, they sound like Rush on that first sideline track, there's a lot to enjoy here. The album's recorded over 3 sides, and the 4th side is one of these laser etched kind of patterns. So the packaging's really nice. The sound quality is great. The pressing's pretty faultless, really. And yeah, nice discovery. Crownlands and Fearless. So there you go, that's a lot for today. I've got a whole bunch of other new stuff coming, and been enjoying listening to that. So when I've got something to say about it, I'll be back for more. Take care. See you soon. Bye for now.